recent one, this is a new one for me, is Vance Nelson, who's a researcher, found this picture in what the source I had was a
Come
rock
on.
ledge located at the edge of the Amazon rainforest. It's a pictograph thought to be about 5,000 years old. And this was in Peru.
Come
Lima,
on.
Peru. But what do you see when you look at that?
So one of us believes that dinosaurs walk the earth today.
And it's not you.
I know. I'm like, how many people would be surprised if it wasn't me? But then I started to think, like, I feel like at first glance, I'm probably seemed like more of the conspiracy theorist. But when you go down the rabbit hole, oh, here's my phone. When you go down the rabbit hole and you really pay attention to our videos, it's like, I think I'm the one reeling us back most of the time when it comes to these conspiracies.
I think you like to bring them up.
Yeah.
You're intrigued by them. I believe them. I look at them, connect all the dots, and I'm like, yep, okay, that's great. I believe that.
Well, so I think we've brought this up before, but there is a personal set of evidence that you've seen personally.
No, I was not allowed to see.
You weren't allowed to see any personal evidence of this, but there may be someone that you're connected to.
A good friend that I trust with my life has photographic evidence, claims to have photographic evidence of
that you weren't allowed to see.
Dinosaurs. I asked this individual point blank, can I see this evidence? And they said, no, you may not see it. They didn't tell me, oh, that's only a rumor, or, oh, that's not true. They said, no, you can't see that evidence. I believed that dinosaurs were still alive before I found out this individual had photographic evidence.
So my question would be like, who's trying to keep this a secret? Like, why would they keep it a secret if it was real?
I don't think that it is a secret. I think that they're so few and far between. They're so deep in the deep and unexplored places in the world that the only thing we have are individual anecdotal evidences. Kind of like if you've ever heard stories of people who said that they saw Nephilim still roaming the earth. It's like they're so few and far between. They're so hidden in the deep and dark places of the world that it's only scattered anecdotal evidence that you can easily brush off as like, it's a legend. Somebody made that up. There is very little, if any, photographic evidence, video evidence beyond anecdotes from explorers.
I wonder why there wouldn't be more though. Like if this was true, why is there not more explorers that have been to these deeper parts of the Amazon? I guess there might not be in the Amazon, but yeah. I could see like the Loch Ness monster idea being more. I see that as more of a possibility than like dinosaurs in a jungle.
Oh, certainly. I do think that there probably are some sauropods still in the deep jungles of Africa or South America. There are probably some, pterodactyls or something like that. I think you call them pterosaurs.
Okay, so walk me through your line of thinking here, because I think a lot of people will be seeing this and be like, what is he talking about?
So here's my flip side. You think that because we have satellites that can take pictures of the whole globe on Google Earth, that we know everything that's out there. And that's just not true. It's just not true. It is absolutely arrogant to think that we actually know what's out there. Okay, recently I got to go fly in an airplane with my friend, and not in a commercial airliner. We were at like 2,500 feet. So you are looking at the place where you live from a height that is like uncomfortable. Like at 30,000 feet, you can't see anything. So you're just kind of like, whatever. I'm not really thinking about it. But at 2,500 feet, you're like, oh yeah, I can see myself falling from this height,
Yeah.
And, but the thing that struck me was we went up in that airplane and I looked around and I realized like our city that we live in, which probably has, it's not that significant. We live in a college town, so when the students come, we balloon to something a little over 100,000 people. It feels kind of busy. It feels full. It's pretty suburban. But when I got up in that plane, I realized it was a speck. And there was just land and land and land and land and land as far as I could see. And I had to squint to see that one little speck that was all the activity that is my entire life. And to think about that on a global scale, that there are caves and jungles and all kinds of crazy places out there that no human eyes have ever laid their eyes on.
Really? Is that true? I tend to think like that we've seen most of the Earth.
And I think that's the thing. Oh, we've got Google Maps. Oh, the age of exploration is long gone. We've seen everything. No, there's no way. There's no way. The Earth is just too big that we haven't seen everything. And how many things, even if we have seen it, just go totally unrecorded. Somebody goes to their dying day with that story, and maybe they tell their kids, or maybe not.
But how would you even... So just to frame it, this isn't just a random conversation. This came up because of a comment on our Age of the Earth episode that said, hey guys, the discrepancies between where the dinosaur fossils are and the human fossils proves this wrong. And you brought up to me that that's kind of just another narrative that you say, because It's like, what is science? And the question that we want to bring up is like, what is scientific consensus? And is there actual scientific consensus about some of these bigger topics like the age of the Earth, or I guess whether or not there's dinosaurs? I don't know why it sounds so funny, but I believe you. So if you want me, I believe you, but I don't know if I believe it myself, but I believe you.
So I just really want everybody to be a critical thinker and to listen when people talk. And the Christian version of this would be anything that has to do with the church fathers. People say that the church fathers support everything that they say. They just dig through the church fathers and they say, they find one quote or two quotes from two different church fathers, and then they say, the church fathers believed in postmillennialism. The church fathers believed in the Catholic view of the Eucharist. The church fathers believed in whatever you want. And you just find two quotes from two church fathers, names that people recognize, Augustine and Irenaeus. Oh my. And you pull out one little quote, you show it on screen, and the church fathers agreed with me. That's the Christian version of this. But there are so many church fathers from across 450, sometimes, depending on where you fudge it, 400 or 500 years of church fathers from all across the Mediterranean, all across the ancient world. And they wrote on all kinds of different stuff. And sometimes they disagree with each other. And so just find one or two quotes and then say, the church fathers say. But it's the same thing with science. You read it in a textbook when you were in 9th grade, and then you just say, the science says. Without any nuance, without any qualifications, without any, the science say. All the scientists say.
Yeah.
And people love to throw their weight around with the science says, and that just brushes right over all the nuance, all the difficulties, all the modern updates, that science is constantly in flux. Science is a tool of question making and answering those questions. Scientism can be a worldview of the settled science, but no science is settled. That's the whole point of science. And right now with the James Webb Telescope, have you ever seen any of this stuff?
Yeah.
The whole entire astronomy world is just like, they're basically like, we're all wrong and everything's going to change now.
Wait, what's happening with that?
So the James Webb Space Telescope is however many times more powerful than the Hubble. It can see in ranges of light that the Hubble telescope couldn't see, and it could see farther than the Hubble telescope could see. And from our view, what I understood, I don't understand very much because it's some serious science, and it's at the cutting edge where people are just now finding some of this information that is crashing all their worldviews. So they haven't even figured out what to make of all the stuff that the James Webb Telescope is seeing. But from what I understand is, it seemed as though the further out the Hubble telescope saw, the less and less organized their galaxies that they saw were. So they go, oh, okay, there we go. Galaxies form at this rate after the Big Bang, and then they devolve at this rate. And when we look out at the expanding universe, that's kind of what they see. And now the James Webb Telescope can see even farther, and we see perfect, very tightly organized spiral galaxies way, 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 way out there. And all the astronomers just like,
yeah,
oops, we don't know what to do with this because it totally breaks our model and how we think the universe works so far. And that's how science is supposed to work.
Right.
You have a working theory, and then new evidence gets put in, and you go, oh man, this new evidence doesn't work with our theory. We gotta turn some gears. We gotta twist it. We gotta crank it.
And especially like the theory of evolution, that's one of those that it's almost became a worldview instead of a theory.
Exactly.
Where it's like, this is how I see the world no matter what. Everything is this survival of the fittest, and even like DNA, and it's my explanation for how everything becomes how it is. Except it's just a theory.
And of all the theories, and that was kind of the James Tour video that we really liked and that we showed a couple episodes ago. That was his point, is evidence keeps coming out. And of all the scientific theories, like astronomers are finding stuff from the James Webb Telescope, and they're all perfectly willing to say, everything's changing and we don't know what to do, but bring on the evidence because we want to find out the truth. Except in evolution. In evolution, that can't happen. All the evidence comes out and they still say like, we'll find a mechanism somewhere to make all this work. And
it seems like anything that can kind of skate around the Christian worldview is like the things that never end up being like a progressive science.
Right.
And that's what James Tour was saying about the origin of life. He's like, the more that we understand it, the further away from the answer we become. We realize we get further and further out, which is very interesting because it's like maybe our theory that we can one day figure out everything. Like they've been going like in theoretical physics, they've been going for the theory of everything for a while, and they thought maybe this is string theory.
Yeah.
And apparently string theory is completely one of those kind of dying theories, but it owns the physics establishment. And so if you don't participate in string theory, you're kind of just an outcast theoretical physicist, because all of the physicists who discovered or have control over the Large Hadron Collider and the research with that basically support string theory. So it's like, you're not in the cool kids club, move out, because you're not contributing to string theory, which is where we're putting all of our time into. But what if we could never actually know everything? Like we could never actually get to a real answer of like, what is a fundamental particle, or how far does the universe go, or what was the origin of life? Like the closer we get, the further we get out from the actual answer. The more details, nuanced details that we find, where it's like, okay, we'd have to answer all these 10 new things that pop up.
Yeah, and that's great. Actually, that's super, super exciting. That should be super exciting. But real scientists are always willing to say like, oh man, this old theory doesn't work anymore. And it feels like this generational, once in a generation moment where you're like, yes, this new discovery has totally transformed and we have to rewrite all the books, and that should be cool. That should be exciting. That is how science is supposed to work. And the astronomers right now at the James Webb Telescope are doing exactly that.
Like we're on the new frontier.
We're on the new frontier. This new technology has opened up all this new stuff that we can look at. Wow, this is amazing. And again, I want to say this loud and clear. If God used evolution to create mankind, I don't have a problem with that. I am perfectly willing to, and I know that many smart people and very sincere Christians do harmonize evolution with Christianity, and that's fine. And I see their arguments, and I'm down with it. I don't think that they're unchristian for believing that. And there are really good Bible questions that actually answers. Where did Cain get his wife? Well, if Adam was one human pulled out from the evolved race of humans that God pulled out and blew his spirit into, right? That actually answers a really good question of where did Cain get his wife and who was Cain afraid was going to kill him? All the other human beings that God had evolved. So anyway, my point is to say,
That's not the explanation you actually believe in, though.
I'm perfectly okay with that.
If someone does.
If someone does. And what I'm saying is that's a really good answer. Those are open questions that Christians should answer. And God used evolution to create human beings is a good way to answer that. However, I don't disbelieve in evolution because of the Bible. I understand that the Bible can be harmonized with evolution. Great. I actually disbelieve evolution because of the science. It is the science that is telling me that random chance mutations did not create life. Abiogenesis chemical reactions did not create the first single-celled organism. It just didn't. The science isn't there. It's not because of the Bible. It's because of the science isn't there. But of all the theories, of all the different things, I mean, physics, from what I understand, I don't understand a lot, but from what I understand, physics, like you were describing, seems to be in this same dead-end position of people unwilling to just throw out their old theories and start fresh with all this evidence. And evolution and biology seems to be in the same place to me.
So we have a clip that you curated for us. Do you want to give a preface to what this is and why we're watching it?
So this is a Christian pastor who has, I think, an undergraduate training in geology. He currently pastors in South Texas, and once every like 2 years, I think, he'll take a Wednesday night series and do a series on evolution. So you can go to their website. They're called the Net Fellowship. This guy's really cool. He's a really good teacher. And they have 1 or 2 different playlists of their Wednesday night series where he goes through DNA, evolution, evolution from biology, from genetics, flood geology, fossil record. And then this episode was this sermon, I guess, was the end of the series where he talks specifically about dinosaurs. So all of the
small things.
Right. All of the... There are lots of good science reasons to believe that dinosaurs existed recently. One of the major ones was soft tissue found in dinosaur bones. So what happens is...
So why have I not ever heard about this?
Because it is one of those things. The evidence, like the James Webb Telescope, you're supposed to see new evidence and go, wow, this changes everything. This is so exciting. Except what happened is they saw this new evidence and they buried it because it would change everything.
That reminds me of the archaeologist who pushed the Joshua Stone off the side.
That is why we keep talking about this. Because
for some reason
human beings
they let their personality. It's like people always talk about, they're like, I'm a purely logical person.
No.
But
not true.
But it's like human beings by nature see things through logic and emotion and whatever else.
I think that too is what frustrates me about people who say the science, the science, the science, the science, is they've bought into the Enlightenment mind virus that like, oh, I'm a purely logical, reasonable, like think Richard Dawkins scoffing at the virgin birth and the resurrection. Oh, that's ridiculous that a miracle would happen. I'm logical. I'm for the science. And you're deceiving yourself.
You really believe someone rose from the dead?
And you are deceiving yourself that you are not a human being with real emotions and biases.
Yeah.
That you, through your own biases, interpret information differently.
It is true. It's like a default kind of way of thinking that's like been in the school system propaganda, where it's like, you believe miracles can happen, like something supernatural that doesn't normally happen, you believe that can happen. Why do we have such an easy time of dismissing stuff like that?
I think it is the Enlightenment mind virus.
It's literally just like propaganda.
Right. There's a famous philosopher, his name was Hume, and he was the one who first came up with the argument that said extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. Have you ever heard an atheist type say that? Extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
He was the first guy to say that, except that even that one phrase is filled full of biases of who gets to say what an extraordinary claim is. Is the fact that my wife was healed of morning sickness in her first pregnancy, is that an extraordinary claim?
Yeah.
Because it kind of wasn't that big of a deal. We just prayed one night and then it never came back. You know, like, is that an extraordinary claim? And why isn't the fact that it happened extraordinary evidence? Or you take a guy like Craig Keener in his 2-volume thick book on miracles, and he didn't get into any of the anecdotes, no stories, only the miracles that have like X-ray before, X-ray after. Only the hard evidence miracles with doctors' reports and all the rest. And there's 2 thick books full of them, miracles that happen today, unexplainable scientific stuff. You know what I mean? But somebody who goes, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, well, you just get to keep moving the goalpost further and further. That's not extraordinary enough. Or that miracle is too extraordinary. You need more extraordinary. Give me a break.
Yeah.
So you have this pride, really. I'm a rational being. I get to be the judge because I think truly rationally. No, you don't. I'm sorry. God bless you. God bless your heart. But no, you just don't.
It is strange. Like, we talk about this every time, but Genesis 3, the serpent, or Genesis 2 and 3, the serpent, he gets to be the judge. He gets to move the goalpost, and he teaches mankind how to move the goalpost and decide if God's in the right or in the wrong. And that's what we do often when we point our finger at God. It's like, who are we to judge God whether he's right or wrong? He's the ultimate arbiter of right and wrong.
And this is something that I've been meditating a lot recently. One of the goalposts that they moved was, God, do you love me? Well, if you loved me, you got this whole, the garden of paradise, the garden of delight.
Yeah.
Everything around you. You can eat from any tree that you want. Happiness, joy, perfect connection and unity and vulnerability between a husband and a wife. Everything perfect and delightful. Well, God, but if you really loved me, you would let me eat from that one. Oh, God's holding something back from you.
If
he's given you everything, and
if you really loved me, you'd let me decide for myself.
Exactly.
Then everyone and everything's on trial 24/7. And you can't just live.
So, and I want to anticipate the counter, which would be, well, you're a Christian, which means you have a bias. Your bias is that you're a Christian and you want to believe that book. Except, I hear that, except fundamentally, what the proposition of the Christian faith is repentance. That I have stopped having my biases, stopped having my pride, checked all of that at the door, and a friend said it like this to me, agreed with God against myself. I did once have biases like you. I did once have pride. I did once want to see things my own way and make God prove himself to me. But fundamentally, becoming a Christian means repenting of all that and stop doing that and listen to God first.
To change your mind.
To change your mind. Yes. And so what's so interesting about the claims, well, you're a Christian, so of course you want to believe that stuff and flip the biases around on me. Actually, it's the opposite. Becoming a Christian means I have repented of all of those things. I have turned against myself. I have chosen a way of life that is denying myself and my own biases to agree with God instead.
Yeah, but how do I know you just haven't been deceived by another? Like, if you thought you were deceived before, why aren't you just tricked into thinking another thing instead of having, actually change your mind to get rid of your biases. You're just picking up a different one.
I remember when my grandmother died. No, I don't remember. When my grandmother died, I was too little to really know what was going on. But when my grandfather died, I was in my 20s, so I was aware of what was going on. And I remember through that process of going to the funeral and doing all the stuff was the first time that I really thought to myself, man, people who accuse Christians of only doing this as a coping mechanism, they kind of got some ammunition. I never really took it that seriously because I had never faced anything so sad and difficult as that. But that was the first time through real tragedy and loss.
Like only going to church as a coping mechanism?
Right.
Or
like
claiming Christianity?
Yeah, you only want to believe that there's heaven and an afterlife and you believe in Jesus and then you get to see your loved ones and you die. You only believe that whole made-up story
because it makes you feel good.
Because it makes you feel good. And it was that moment of real tragedy and loss that I was like, man, there's some ammo to that because this is really comforting. This really is the only thing that is getting me through this tragedy.
What's wild about that too is when it comes to funerals, even non-Christians, people who aren't actually followers of Jesus, and even atheists at time will be like, they're in a better place now. Like they even say that as a coping mechanism, which is interesting.
And so I hear that.
Yeah.
The story is good news. It's called the gospel, the good news, for a reason, because it is good news.
Yeah, you're destined to die, like everyone, return to the dirt, but put your faith in Jesus, and he's going to come and raise you from the dead.
Mm-hmm.
And he proved that through raising himself from the dead.
And you get to live with him in his renewed paradise forever because he's the Lord over all the nations.
Yeah, that's pretty good news.
That's really good news. But then you read, on the flip side though, what is so tragic, you read some of the early accounts of the way that the Romans were interacting with the early Christians. And they would say things like this. This is crazy. They would say things like this. They go, the Christians, they don't lie. They don't lie about anything. Now, can you imagine if modern Christians, if the entire group of professing Christians were so incredibly honest that the watching world would say about them, man, the Christians are weird, but one crazy thing is they never lie. I don't get those people. They never lie. And they give away all their money to the poor. I don't get it with those guys. So my point in saying that is when you take the good of Christianity, the good news, and pat yourself on the back with it, and do not take the part of Christianity where Jesus said, deny yourself, take up your cross to follow me, where the watching world, I remember listening to a preacher once and he said, we could win the world for Christ very easily. He said, this is all it would take. If every Christian businessman would run their business as a Christian, no lying, no dishonesty, no cheating, total vulnerability, no getting one over on people, no price gouging. If you ran your business totally honestly, as you could, everyone would see how amazing it is to do business with Christians, and everyone would become a Christian. So my point again is, when you only take the good parts that make you want to pat yourself on the back and you don't do the self-denying parts, I get where you could come up with that Christianity is just a coping mechanism, that Christianity is just a bias that you use to make yourself feel better. It's just a social structure that you've bought into because it's what your parents did or what your grandparents did, whatever.
Yeah, and there's one side of that where it's like, you're an idiot for believing that. And then there's another side, more along the lines of the Petersons, but Petersons, I think, moved beyond that now, where it's like, Christianity is a good thing for humanity. It's good to believe in something, and it makes people better people.
Well, see,
but dysfunctional.
But what Peterson is saying now, which is even more than that, is the only way you can have flourishing and goodness, real goodness and cohesion in civilization, is to live by the Christian message. And that is what I'm saying. When people live by it, live by the self-denying sacrificial principles against themselves. That's why that thing was so striking to me. The Christians never lie. That's what the Romans said about them. That it's working against yourself to follow Jesus. That is the thing that makes the world's eyes pop.
And the thing is that you cannot do that on your own. You must need the Spirit to help you do it.
You have to at least have had a real change. Something actually has transformed your mind, because you are working against yourself for this thing that you believe.
Right.
So I don't even know how we start talking about that. Oh, I think the point
dinosaur
was
video.
Biases. Becoming a Christian means I repented, which means I am working against myself. I have laid down my own life to accept and receive this message because I believe that it's true, not because it benefits me. And the direct impact of that is there are some ways in which it manifestly does not benefit me. I could have more benefits by not being a Christian in certain areas of my life.
Yeah.
But I believe that it is good news. Even to deny myself, that's good news. And that's what it means to become a Christian. On the other hand, to go along, to get along, to hang on to your pride, that's the easy thing to do. Okay, now back to the there are lots of back to the dinosaurs. There are lots of good biological reasons to question the consensus about dinosaurs. Not one, probably the most amazing of which is when you have a bunch of dirt on top of a bone, slowly the minerals get replaced and that bone becomes a rock, a full rock all the way through. And that is called a fossil. However, everyone just thought, well, this is millions of years old, so it's completely become a rock. Except some lady accidentally one time dropped a bone in some acid, went, oh no, pulled it out, and realized, oh wait, inside there's living tissue. Which means that this thing cannot be older than like 100,000 years old. Period. I mean, like maybe even within a couple 10,000 years old. When this creature died, the fact that there is still living, soft, spongy tissue on the inside of this fossilized bone, it has not fossilized all the way through, tells me that this creature lived recently. I mean, on the timescale of billions of years, recently. But to say 10,000 years instead of 4 billion, that breaks everything about the evolutionary timescales and the narrative and the fossil record, what we tell ourselves about what the fossil record is. So there are good biological reasons to question the narrative that science just has not addressed at all. Because you would have to take a hammer and smash the entire thing to bits. You can't fit that in to the theory. You just have to smash the theory and start again from zero.
It seems like you have to smash some fossils too, which we typically don't do, right?
Well, okay, since they found that, they have started doing that. They have started looking at fossils, and there's a lot of fossils with this soft tissue inside.
Mm.
So that's the thing. You cannot fit a dinosaur that lived 10,000 years ago with soft tissue still in its bones into the theory of evolution and timescales and the fossil layer record as it stands. You would have to smash it. And because they're not willing to smash it, they're just turning a blind eye to it. What this guy's going to go over is not necessarily biological stuff you did in the lab, but historical accounts within the last 2,500 years of people who claim to have interacted with dinosaurs. So from 1500 to 1500 AD, 500 BC, all kinds of accounts in that range, some artwork, some stories, some historians who said, yeah, we fought this giant dragon creature, blah, 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 blah. Like totally like it was normal. Like, yeah, we saw a dragon, we fought it. right? So, but here's the thing. We skipped over this part, but you have to keep in mind the first dinosaur fossil, I think, was an iguanodon, and they found it in the late 1800s. So late 19th century, where people digging up dinosaurs and, this is important, calling them dinosaurs. So the word dinosaur shows up in our language for these extinct creatures in the 1800s, late 1800s. So the question is, if someone were to interact with something we would call a dinosaur today, before the mid 1800s, what would they call it?
A dragon, I guess.
On the whole, most people call them dragons. Yes.
So, what classifies something as a dinosaur? Is it just that they're really old,
No, I think so. It has something
or
to
just not exist anymore? Because there's
I think dinosaur means terrible lizard.
okay.
So there is like a reptilian quality
nature
to them.
it.
You can tell
What's the
that
deal with everybody saying that dinosaurs were feathered?
you can find some fossils of, velociraptor type creature crushed in the fossil, and the imprint left in the rock
Feathers.
has feathers on it. Yes. So the difference between a velociraptor and a chicken is basically you shift the hips a little bit and make it stand differently. So is it possible that you could say it one way, right? Okay, so here's what you find. A whole bunch of bones scattered. And then you put it together, but the scientist decides which way the hips sit, whether they sit forward or backwards, which way the legs go, whether they bend backwards or whether they bend forwards, which way the knees go,
And you reconstruct it, and then you determine if it's a lizard or a bird or...
Well, exactly. A lizard, the hips work one way, and a bird, the hips work a different way. So you could construct the same velociraptor as a bird or as a lizard. And some people, and so what the modern story is, oh, well, they evolved from the dinosaurs, lizards, into birds. Or another thing that you could, another way that you could say is like, well, that one was a bird and that one was a lizard. They're two different things, and you just built it like a lizard instead of a bird, but it was supposed to be a bird. Because the whole thing is, all you've got is bones. You don't have any ecology. You don't have any flesh. You don't have anything other than bones. You have no idea what that thing looked like with skin on it, or how it walked, or how it moved, or how it behaved. That's all you got is the bones. So to say it was a feathered reptile, well, why couldn't it have just been a bird? Like an ostrich who ran on its legs.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's beside the point. What we're about to watch is some historical accounts of people having interacted with what they often call dragons or serpents, but we might recognize them today as dinosaurs. And again, this is not necessarily a biology question, but it is a question of what do you do with these accounts? You either have to throw them all out as legendary or artistic or imaginary, right? Oh, he was making that up. Oh, he was mistaken. Oh, he was. But at some point, why can't you just say, like, they really did see something? Yes, you would have to take your worldview and smash it, completely shatter it to oblivion. But you could do that and accept these stories as plainly as they are received.
And you're saying that's part of the consensus shifting, that sometimes when people tie their life to these theories, they don't want to move because they've built their fundamental worldview on top of it.
Yeah, and sometimes it's even worse than their fundamental worldview. Sometimes it's like their entire personality is about the science and being rational. And, I feel like Richard Dawkins is probably in a place like that. And a lot of the YouTube atheists that I've seen, it's beyond their worldview, their morality, basically their religion. It is down deep into their entire personality is about shaking their fist at God. I don't want to psychologize,
Yeah. But the same claim could be said about Christians. It's just, what do we do with the evidence? And what you were saying, the difference with a Christian is a true believer, at least, is it's someone who changes their mind. Like, Christians change their mind in accordance with the revealed truth.
Right. Well, okay, so let's flip it back.
Yeah.
I could imagine a young 16-year-old kid who first gets introduced to the God delusion. He's in a fundamentalist Christian home. He's been to church camp every year for as long as he can remember. He grew up singing all the VBS songs, and then he finally gets his hands on the God delusion, and he reads it in secret, and he doesn't have the heart to tell his parents because it would be so crippling to them that he's lost his faith and become an atheist. He doesn't believe any of the stories anymore. And that person would probably tell me, no, I stopped believing and it was just as costly to me as it was to you. I get that. But here's where I think the Bible is very misunderstood. Is the Bible's main point is not that something is costly socially. Because I get that it can be costly socially either way. It's not that it's costly mentally, that you were truly convinced. Some people are truly convinced of the truth of Christianity. Some people think they're truly convinced of the truth of atheism. It's not that it's costly emotionally, that it made me feel better or made me feel better one way or the other. The Bible puts all of its chips on morally. It goes like this. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. What is the fear of the Lord? It explains it in the book of Job. It says, the fear of the Lord is to hate evil. All the Bible's chips are costly morally. I'm trying to explain.
Is that death to self?
Exactly.
Like, you have to wage war against yourself.
Exactly.
Against what you want, against what you feel and desire.
So exactly. The Bible says that the spirit is pitted in a battle against the flesh. And a Christian is somebody who listens to the spirit. And everybody else is somebody who listens to the flesh. And so the question comes down to not, was it costly for you socially? I get that coming out as an atheist probably ticked off your fundamentalist parents and ostracized you from your church and all the friends you had ever known. And I get that. It probably was costly to you socially, just like becoming a Christian might be costly to someone socially. It might be costly to you emotionally. What do I do? My faith is lost. I thought I believed in God and now I don't know what's going on. I get that it's costly emotionally, just like it's costly emotionally for some people to become Christians. It's costly in all kinds of different ways in both directions. But the plain fact is, costly morally only works in one direction.
Yeah. Well, and also the claim is that you become a new person. Like, you become something different than before. Not just that it's through the changing of your mind that then you become a new person. It's not just that your mind has changed. Oh, now I thought I believed that, but now I believe this. It's, I've come to a revelation of the truth, and that changed me fundamentally to where I now gain the ability to deny myself. And
yeah, well, I think with the way the Bible puts it is it's a positive feedback loop. It does start with desire. Right. I want to become a different person. And in that desire, I abide in Christ. He gives me the ability. And with that ability, I desire more of him. He gives me more ability. I desire more of him. It's a positive feedback loop. And so to say that you start with the desire or you start with him, you start with the transformation or you start with the desire for the transformation is almost
the same thing.
Yeah, it's like whatever. Yeah. It's always going to go in circles. Just abide. But abiding, in that talk on abiding, John 14, 15, 16, Jesus says, if you love me, keep my commandments.
Right.
So only in one direction does the cost morally, only in one direction, becoming a Christian, is there a cost morally. And that's the one that the Bible cares about.
No.
The fact that you denied yourself for this truth is a kind of evidence in itself.
But then you bring up Buddhism, where it's like it's all about denial.
Oh,
in
for
general.
a totally different reason.
For euphoria, or what it was, it for enlightenment.
In Buddhism, I'm sure a Buddhist would love to correct me and tell me I'm wrong. But I hope I would do a decent job of representing it. In Buddhism, you deny yourself because life is bad. Existing is bad. Existing itself is bad. Therefore, I deny myself. Right? Existing is bad. Food, this is so dumbed down. This is so like second grade, but it's the best I can do right now.
The more you deny yourself, the more you become one with the...
Well, okay. Existing is bad. Food and my body exist in the material world. They're stuff, and stuff is bad. What I need to do is get rid of stuff and go seek the unity of the unseen, right? The consciousness of the divine that connects everything. And because that stands opposed to stuff being material is being further away from the consciousness of that thing. So the reason why I deny myself pleasure, just take one, food, is because it is connecting me to the material world, which itself is bad. So I need to disconnect from pleasure, pain or pleasure, all material things, so that I can have more consciousness of the divine. That is not the teaching of Christianity. The teaching of Christianity is that my will opposed to God's will makes everything bad. The world should be good. I make it bad by opposing God's will. So I deny myself not material things as material things, but I deny myself whatever it takes because it's myself that is bad. And the connection with the divine is not a means to escape the material world and escape myself, but the connection with the divine is a means of entrance back into the material world. Because when I truly connect and abide in Christ, I connect back with myself as he made me, as the image of God, and therefore can be reintroduced to the world as the image of God, as its ruler, as the way that God intended it for me to be the master over the world, and
to take care of it,
and to cause it to flourish. As long as I am corrupted in my will, so that's the problem. In Buddhism, the will is not the problem. The fact that you are an existing material thing, separate from the consciousness of the oneness of everything, is the problem.
But in Christianity, it's I will, like mankind wills selfishness.
Yes,
where
and
it's about
that is the problem.
It's about me, and I'm the priority, and everybody else gets out of my way. But the flip is that you count others as more significant than yourself.
Yes, and with that shift, through connection with the divine, so then there's kind of that echo again. It is through connection with the divine that happens, but I actually get my will transformed so that I can re-enter the material world as a cause of blessing instead of cursing. So the whole goal is to come back into the material world. God creates a new heaven and new earth.
Right.
He doesn't say like, "Whew, done with that experiment. Now we're all just going to go be spirits in heaven."
The restoration of all things. He restores all things.
He makes a new earth for you to come back to and enjoy material things again. But because the problem of your stubborn, prideful, fearful will is solved, you can be a blessing to creation and to the material world instead of a curse to it.
Yeah. Okay, dinosaurs. I think this is the longest we've ever waited to show a clip. Do we want to jump into it?
Just do it. We've already given it enough.
So let's talk about eyewitness accounts. These are fascinating. I find them very fascinating. Of people who have, in one way or the other, described or witnessed that they saw dinosaurs. And this would all be post-flood, because we don't have a record pre-flood like that. other than the few chapters of the Bible in Genesis. So the first one we'll look at is second
Okay, pause.
century account of.
Sorry,
It's all good.
but you did ask me
Mm-hmm.
because you were exposed to. Wow, pardon me. That was a funny noise that came out of my throat. You were exposed to somebody who claimed dinosaurs were a genetic modification by the Nephilim of God's creation.
Today. Yeah.
And I was like, I don't buy that. And this is part of why.
Mm.
Because if there were dinosaurs after the flood, that tells me the dinosaurs made it onto the ark, which tells me God made them in his original plan and wanted them preserved.
But you're saying some of them could have been genetic.
Some of them could have been made more violent. What God says during the flood is, the earth was filled with violence.
Mm.
And so if some of them were bred to become more violent, I buy that. I'm fine with that. But the fact that there are dinosaurs after the flood tells me that in God's eyes, some of them were good and worth preserving.
Yeah.
So that's...
Roman soldiers slaying of a dragon. So that's the word they would use to describe a dinosaur prior to 1822. They would call it a dragon or a monster or something like that. So here's a reference. Titus Livius Patavius, 64 or 59 BC. He lived till AD 17. So he would have been more or less a contemporary of the time of Jesus, just before that. He was known as Livy. He was a Roman historian who wrote a monumental history of Rome and the Roman people. So he's a legitimate source. He writes, one African reptile attacked the Roman army of General Regulus. He gives names. According to the Roman historian Livy, he says this, quote, after many soldiers had been seized in the dragon's mouth, and many more crushed by the folds of its tail, its hide being too thick for javelins and darts, the dragon was at last attacked by military engines and crushed by repeated blows from heavy stones. Cool, huh?
Okay, pause.
That's
Now think. What is a creature?
Is it made up?
Now, okay, you go, oh, he was just thinking of an elephant. Oh, he was just thinking of a rhinoceros.
Yeah. Rhinoceros seems
One,
viable, maybe.
the thing, okay, it crushed people. Okay, it's a scary creature that had a thick hide. Rhinoceros, elephant, fine. Problem solved.
But rhinoceroses don't eat people.
It ate them in its mouth, and two, it crushed them with its tail. You look at an elephant tail and a rhinoceros tail, they're not crushing anybody with those tails. This is a creature with a big sauropod type, T-Rex type tail that can swing around and smash people and grab a grown man in its mouth.
So why is it not made up?
Because at a certain point, you can't just say everything you don't like is made up.
Right.
Or, and he's right, like this is a bona fide, I mean, if you're familiar with his name, Livy, he's a real bona fide historian. So why would you just make up? And that's the thing, it's so plain, it's so normal. Yeah, there was a regiment, they fought a dragon. It has none of the character of legend.
Right.
Is it, you know what I mean? It doesn't...
Why are we so sure that these accounts aren't real?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah.
This is the only reason,
Evolution.
so that Livy and his contemporaries never encountered a dinosaur. That's the only reason to not take it at face value. To say like, oh, that's ridiculous that Livy would ever encounter a dinosaur.
Because we're assuming dinosaurs are millions of years old versus thousands.
Yeah, exactly.
And you're saying that the fossil evidence with the material, the organic material that they found, And these accounts at least lead us to a place where we can at least question the established scientific worldview on this.
You know what? I'll even say this. So what if there's millions of years? So what if dinosaurs existed millions of years ago? Sure. But at least from the soft tissue in the bones and these accounts, I'm going to conclude there were dinosaurs recently. Within the last millennium, there were people who saw dinosaurs. Now, even if they did exist millions of years ago. Now, you can also, I do reinterpret the fossil record. I don't think that the fossil record is portraying millions of years, but
Because you're talking about the sedimentary layers.
right.
And you're saying the difference makers because of cataclysmic floods. Like
Yes.
the flood in Genesis that could displace and move the layers.
I
and
would
that's not being taken into account because
Yes.
it's just long-term sedimentary layers over long periods of time. But
exactly.
they could have been rapidly formed through worldwide flood.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. You ready for some more?
Yeah, let's
Some more
continue.
dino
This is
stories?
interesting.
An amazing account from a Roman historian who's citing a specific general and how they responded to this. And you say, well, if he's making it up, he could have gotten in a lot of trouble as a Roman historian, citing a specific general that was present at the time. And so it adds even greater credibility to the fact that he gives names and dates and so forth.
Okay.
Here's another one.
Exactly to his point. You basically have two options. You either leave any names off of it, no names, no dates, so that you can make up whatever story you want, or you make up the story and include the name specifically to puff up the guy and be like, he was the hero, he came down, he drew the lightning blade, and he slashed and he hacked and single-handedly defeated, right? That would have all the character of legend. Either one. Nameless people glorifying Rome and the might of her legions, or you name this guy and you make him the one that's glorified. Both of those would have the character of legend. But to name the guy and have it just be like, yeah, it happened to him, that to me dispels, takes all the air out of it was made up.
Yeah.
Because then the question is like, for what reason would you make it up?
Our boy Corp in here says 20-foot crocodile.
How do you know a crocodile isn't a dinosaur?
Dun, dun, dun.
Seems like a terrible lizard to me, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's like, that's why I was asking what is the differentiating factor of what makes a dinosaur a dinosaur?
Bro, Komodo
It's just-
dragon? Seems like a dinosaur to me.
Yeah.
Those things are gnarly.
Yeah, those will kill you, right?
Well, we'll keep going.
They spit fire, right?
I don't think
Komodo
so.
dragons?
I think they're
They got
venomous.
like venomous.
I think they're venomous, yeah.
All right.
This one was AD 23 until about AD 79. So he would have been a contemporary with the early church, the time of the writing of the New Testament. Gaius Plinius Secundus, better known as Pliny the Elder, was a Roman author, naturalist, and natural philosopher, as well as a naval and army commander of the early Roman Empire and personal friend of the Emperor Vespasian. He wrote the following. Now, this is pretty cool. So he describes in
this guy.
great detail how the large dragon that flies and has a long tail attacks the elephants. Here's what he says. Africa produces elephants, but it is India that produces the largest as well as the dragon, who is perpetually at war with the elephant. It's interesting that he doesn't say the dragon's at war with people. He says the dragon is at war with the elephant, and is itself of so enormous a size as easily to envelop the elephants with its folds and encircle them in its coils. The contest is equally fatal to both of them. The elephant vanquished falls to the earth, and by its weight crushes the dragon which is entwined around it. So here's this Roman historian describing this conflict in India. Don't you find that interesting? I can picture it. So here's another one, another Greek historian, Herodotus. I'm not sure how you would say it, but we're going even deeper in the past, 500 BC. And he says, there's a place in Arabia situated very near the city of Buto, to which I went, and on hearing of some winged serpents, and when I arrived there, I saw bones and spines of serpents in such quantities as it would be impossible to describe. The form of the serpent is like that of a water snake, but he has wings without feathers, Daniel, and as like as possible to the wings of a bat. Pretty cool. Now this one is my favorite. Marco Polo writes, in 1267 AD,
This is within 1,000 years of today.
and I believe this is when he was perhaps traveling to China. He says, here are seen huge serpents, 10 paces in length, or about 30 feet, and 10 spans, which would be about 8 feet, girt of the body. And at the forepart near the head, they have 2 short legs, having 3 claws like those of a tiger. He goes on to describe at great length how they were hunting these animals and how traps were set for them and so forth. So if you want to look it up, you can read the whole narrative. It's kind of lengthy, so I didn't want to read the whole thing and get bogged down. But it's pretty interesting. Marco Polo, who doesn't know about Marco Polo and all of his adventures and travels? So he's documenting what he's seeing. And so what is he describing? He's describing a T-Rex, or at least one of his cousins. Right? So he's got, if you look at a T-Rex, there's one right there. We have one right in the room. It's just those 2 claws. But a T-Rex, if you look at them, they actually have 3 claws and the little arms under the head. What other dinosaur fits that description? They were hunting these things down.
Come on.
What,
Come on.
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
I don't know.
What do you mean you don't know?
Hey, we got someone in the chat. Pariah? Is that how you say their name? Is that how you say their name? Pariah? What's up? I don't know, man.
Come on.
I don't know, man. I'm definitely intrigued. I want to look into this more. I mean, I just think of the movie. Now, I am thinking of a fictional movie.
Okay.
But the movie Anacondas, where they like eat this flower and they become these huge anacondas. Like, is 30 feet in length and 8 feet wide the size of a T-Rex? Is that a T-Rex?
Probably a baby one. Or like a littler one. But a car is generally 18 to 20 feet. So think like a minivan and a half long.
Yeah.
Right?
And then 8 feet wide.
No, 8 feet around the belly. So an 8-foot circumference around its trunk, around its torso. That's what he's describing. I mean,
not
that's pretty,
diameter.
Yeah, circumference around its center.
Interesting.
An 8 foot. So that sounds like more or less the proportions of a small T-Rex, cousin of the T-Rex.
But why'd they describe it as a serpent?
Well, he didn't describe the T-Rex as a serpent. What Herodotus was saying was that there are snakes with wings that he saw.
That look like bats.
And their wings looked like bat wings. There's just...
So you think dragons were real?
Yes, I do believe there was a creature that probably had wings and had the ability to shoot fire out of its mouth.
Really? Really?
Yeah. There are insects that can shoot fire out of their rears.
Really?
Yes, it's called the bombardier beetle. They have 2 chemical chambers in their thorax. Yes, they have 2 chemical chambers in their thorax, and they open, and the 2 chemicals come and spurt. Pss, pss, pss.
Like a flamethrower.
Yeah. Yeah, actually very much more like a flamethrower.
Right, because it's you shoot out the liquid and then you
Mhm.
light it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, why not?
I don't know. I just never looked into this stuff.
God's whole creation is weird and wild.
Yeah, it's like he created all the creepy and crawly things.
All right. If the stories don't get you, we got to keep going because he's got pictures.
Okay.
Just keep going.
I believe it was China. I'd have to go back and look, but that's kind of how I remember it. All right, so I'm going to show you a clip of a huge crocodile.
Okay. Fast forward through this.
But this is the crocodile he was talking about, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we going? We're going past this?
Yeah. Just pass this one.
That is a big crocodile.
That is a big crocodile.
So play from here?
No, yeah.
Play.
Yeah, go
And
past
some of
Marco
these
Polo.
animals, these beasts, these monsters, dragons, to do work.
There you go. Yeah.
Much like you would see. So first, when we talk about dragon legends, you see in the Chinese culture, even to this day, you see the dragons depicted in fireworks and so forth, because they are a big deal in the history and the legacy, kind of the ancient legacy of the Chinese was that dragons were the thing. And so look at the Ming Dynasty pottery, 1368, 1644. You see really the skull looks a lot like a Hogwarts dinosaur skull, which was discovered in 2006.
Okay, here's what
so
he's
we're
showing
going
you.
to see is there's a lot of
The dragon depicted on that Ming Dynasty pottery doesn't just look like art. It looks very much like an actual dinosaur skull that we have found.
Can you go back to that? I want to see that again.
His point is, they might not have been drawing a made-up creature. They might have been basing their drawing off of a creature that someone had seen. Because it looks very similar to this skull.
That's an actual skull.
That is an actual dinosaur skull. And that is the drawing.
That looks like a dragon.
Yeah, that straight up looks like a dragon. Come on.
That's an actual skull.
Yeah, that is a dinosaur skull.
Hogwarts dinosaur skull.
Yes. And there's the drawing.
So you're saying we may have just separated the wings from the T-Rex when they were really just one?
Well, in Chinese legends, the dragons don't have wings. They just fly. You know,
They're
American dragon Jake Long. Yeah, they're seraphim. Except the seraphim do have wings.
Really?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Jake Long, let's go. Have you seen there's that epic battle between him and Danny Phantom?
No.
Yeah.
What is that?
It's like
Is that something Nickelodeon did?
No. They did like this YouTube, I forget what it's called, but it's some battle where they simulate if it was Danny Phantom versus
Danny Phantom would win.
I think the American Dragon won. I can't remember. But maybe it was Danny Phantom
right.
because he like sucked him in his sternum. I don't know.
Right. All right, keep going.
years old, 2,000 years old that we have that depicts various types of sea monsters and dinosaurs and so forth. So the dragon
These get
legends of the
crazier.
Chinese, you have the legends of the Indian thunderbird, for instance. Ancient art and pictographs. We'll look at dragons in China. Okay, there's another one, the Shang Dynasty. Indians in Canada. There's one.
Look at this.
It would be an ankylosaurus.
That is a cave drawing,
Mm-hmm.
and that is an ankylosaurus.
Okay.
My point, what other creature has that very distinctive shape with the bristles all down its back and the horns?
A dragon?
That's what I'm saying. It looks just like an ankylosaurus. All right, keep going.
Depicted on their rock art. Looks like maybe some sort of snake there near it. I don't know. This one is really fascinating. This is a more recent one. This is a new one for me. Is Vance Nelson, who's a researcher, found this picture what the source I had was a
Come
rock
on.
ledge located at the edge of the Amazon rainforest. It's a pictograph thought to be about 5,000 years old. And this was in Peru.
Come
Lima,
on.
Peru. But what do you see when you look at that? I see 13 warriors. I counted them, right? I see 13 warriors surrounding what looks like a sauropod dinosaur. Wouldn't you agree with the long neck and the tail and all that? It's a little smeared, but
Okay,
kind of
so
makes you wonder.
there's no other way they would have known about these things, because the claim is that dinosaurs and humans did not coexist at the same time. Is that true?
Yes. The
Or
consensus
did
claim.
Neanderthals? Like, what's the
No.
deal with that?
No,
Okay.
they're separated by millions of years.
The claim.
The scientific consensus claim is that mammals and dinosaurs were totally separate in time.
Is it possible they could have just been painting and somehow been lucky to draw something that looked similar? I'm just trying to push back here, man. Like, we're talking about dinosaurs being alive
But again,
with humans.
what
So-
we're saying is, like James Tour, the more and more and more and more and more you see, the more and more it kind of becomes like,
We don't really know anything.
okay, maybe like if it was just the sauropod one, or if it was just the ankylosaurus one, or I mean the dragon one was kind of a stretch. I'll give you that. But it's like it's the more and more and more you see.
Is there more stuff?
There's more.
Okay, let's see.
That's what it looks like to me, and I think that's what most people see when they see that. The Sioux Indians, for instance, when interviewed by ethnologists, described Unkutehi, I don't know, as an immense reptile or serpent with legs. He was shaped like a giant scaly snake with feet and a notched backbone or crest like a giant saw, and had a heavy spiked tail. Sounds like an ankylosaurus to me. They have a heavy spiked tail, right? It's really, there's so many odd shapes and sizes of these dinosaurs, but the ankylosaurus was the one the Canadians depicted. I think the Canadian Indians depicted. So we'll run through a few more. Here's ancient Egypt. That would be 3,300 BC.
Okay, hold on.
Look
hold on.
like sir.
You got to check this. Because
Why are their necks intertwined?
okay. Hold that thought.
Okay.
Keep going.
And there's some
Sauropods,
bird-like.
don't they? Next, Rome, 200 AD. Sea dragons, which looks
Okay,
like...
stop. Same creature,
Intertwined.
also intertwined. Separated by thousands of years. These two pieces of art. One from ancient Rome, one from ancient Egypt. Depicting two creatures that look exactly the same, doing the exact same thing.
Now you're making a better case.
See? See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you could think they totally made it up. That is it's like a symmetrical kind of art. It's cool. But that two different cultures separated by thousands of years would draw creatures that look very similar doing the exact same thing. You could say it was just artistic, or you could say that those sauropod creatures would actually do something like that, either
Would
in
they?
a fighting or mating ritual.
Let me give you an alternative theory.
Go ahead.
Maybe, and I'm saying just with this one, maybe it doesn't explain the other ones, but maybe it does for some of them. Maybe these two cultures are separated by time, but not by pharmakia.
Okay.
And these are visions given by
Sure.
demonic entities of the spiritual realm, of spiritual beings. And
Maybe.
they are participating in, quote unquote, the dark arts, and that's giving them the vision. And that's why it's the
Maybe.
same.
Maybe.
Would you think that's more likely?
Like,
Or just as of likely of a conclusion for this particular one?
not necessarily.
Okay.
Not with all the other evidence together. with all the evidence together, the sauropods, the ankylosaurs, we'll see a Stegosaurus pretty soon, that this probably was some part of this particular dinosaur's life. Yeah, have you ever seen giraffes fight?
Yeah.
The way they swing their necks at each other? You know, it's just probably part of what they
How do
did.
we know these aren't demons?
You can never be sure.
Or like you said before, which I don't know if we're ever going to review that video, that podcast we watched, or Nephilim altered their DNA somehow.
You can never be sure.
Yeah. Okay. Is there more?
There's more.
Okay. Now this is the most convincing evidence for me so far.
Thank you. Okay.
So I will.
This actually probably the Stegosaurus one that is yet to come is pretty. It's pretty wild. But this one is.
Corp said those are lions.
What? Give me a break. Hey, I respect you a lot, but come on with that.
Yeah.
That's a step too far.
Okay. What else we got here?
Plesiosaur. Cambodia. This would have been something carved in 1000 AD. Oops. Cambodia. Okay, well, anyway, go to the next one. I know what it is. Mosasaurus. If we can go back, it's misspelled. I think it's M-O-S. But anyway, a Mosasaurus is depicted on ancient Greece 530 BC on their
Megalodon?
pottery. That was
They're
one
similar,
of the fossils I brought.
but
to
it's
Mosasaurus.
Mosasaur.
I just want to
I
say
don't know if y'all saw that.
that depiction on that's almost more scary than the render over here.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
the eye just wide open, like, oh my god.
Oh yeah.
And
That
it's-
would
and
be
there's
something
dolphins.
you would see on a
There's
trip.
dolphins around it.
That is something you would see on a trip.
Oh, bro. Yes. Yeah, that's creepy as heck.
All right. The
Ancient Greece-
Cambodia is coming.
Okay.
530 BC on their pottery. That was one of the fossils I brought, some Mosasaurus teeth. I don't know if y'all saw them, but there are lots of them, just like there are lots of shark's teeth. Anyway, as far as in the fossil record. So when they die, that's kind of like what's left because they don't have any, skeletal structure. So the next one is one of my favorite ones ever. Maybe. Nope. Where's my Cambodia? Keep going. Just keep going until we find Cambodia. Yes, there it is. Okay. Cambodia, and that is my daughter. And she is a world traveler, and I told her, if you're going to go to the Cambodian temple, please find the Stegosaurus carving. And she found it. It was way back in there somewhere. But you see, she's standing next to it for scale, and it's the Stegosaurus has such a distinctive spine, right? These kind of like fins or whatever that are on it. Now, it's not a precise replica of what we see artist depictions of Stegosaurus, but it's pretty close. It's a general likeness of a Stegosaurus. And you're going, well, if you'd been one of the Cambodian monks or whatever, and you'd seen one in the forest or seen it in the jungle, and then you came back and said, this is what I remember. This is how I'm going to... It may not be scientifically precise, but it's really close. It gets the idea. So that one is really cool. 1000 AD. I've got more.
All right, I think
And
that's
Europe,
enough for our sake.
Mm.
I did not know you were so resistant to this before we started.
It's not that I'm necessarily resistant. Well, I definitely feel the pressure of like this stuff making you like look crazy. It's kind of like, you first getting into like talking about Nephilim stuff. It's like, or even the podcast we watched today about like how dinosaurs could be Nephilim, altering DNA, where it gets in like conspiracy theory land where you kind of do get some of the crazies. Where it's all mixed up into these weird like...
And you do have to stand up against everyone and say everyone is wrong.
I guess too, it's like dinosaurs were such a part of my childhood. Jurassic Park movies, watching every single one of those, pretending we were the dinosaurs after seeing the movies, watching Land Before Time, watching the movie Dinosaur. So many, like the late 90s, early 2000s, full of dinosaur movies.
Dinotopia.
Full of it. Yeah. And movies, TV shows.
And it's just like millions of years, millions of years, millions of years, millions of years.
Yeah. So it's not that I've never seen anything like this. The only thing that I've heard about dinosaurs, my one thing, is from you,
That one offhand comment about our friend who saw one.
who had a picture of a velociraptor. Not a velociraptor, pterodactyl. Baby pterodactyl. That was alive. So, but I did have anecdotal evidence from someone I met who claimed to have seen Nephilim bones
Firsthand.
from tomb raiders in. Should I say the exact location?
Probably not. Just give me a direction. Part of the world.
East.
The East.
But this particular range of mountains that met, and that there's basically no one country owns these mountains, and apparently there's lots of different people groups that live there.
Oh, because they're so gnarly.
Yeah, like tomb raiders, like legit. I forget what you call it, but literally they're like killing each other, fighting each other, still to this day. Warlords kind of whole
Gotcha.
deal with multiple different languages where they won't let National Geographic show up, you know. And the story was that this Christian missionary basically got into the culture, and I met this person, and
Became friends with a warlord or what?
became friends with tomb raiders, where they, you know,
Laura Croft, baby.
Yeah, they went into these caves that had never been excavated before because it's so much in this remote mountainous region, and would ask them literally like, hey, will you smuggle these rubies that we found in these tombs back into the U.S. to sell them and give us the money? Yeah, because they couldn't get them. They couldn't find, you know, they couldn't sell them to anyone. No one wanted to buy them, but the U.S. has a market for it. And so he's like, hey, I won't say his name. I almost said his name. Hey, like,
That would have been bad.
Yeah.
That would have been really bad.
take these rubies into the U.S. I know this sounds fabricated. Like, it sounds like a
Oh, no.
storybook.
No, I'm hooked.
But basically, and he's like, so I'm just going to say Bob. So, Bob, what do you think? Like, after asking him to, and he's like, no, I can't do that, basically. Like, sorry, that's against, like, because they knew he was Christian. So he's like, it's against my religion. And
Is it though?
to smuggle in rubies into the U.S. and sell them for some tomb raiders?
Yeah, but did they do anything wrong?
I don't know. Bro. Just, but the idea of smuggling rubies.
Okay,
into-
smuggling, maybe. That's gray.
And ask him, he's like, but I saw a femur bone this big and a skull this big. And he's like, what do you think those are? And he goes, and Bob says, you know, it's probably the giants that the Bible talks about. He's like, oh, okay. So
Did he get to see the bones?
okay, this is where it gets a little sketch, because I got his contact on Telegram.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you know, probably a few months after I got back in the country, in the U.S., I told him there, I was like, hey, when you go see them, you need to take pictures and send them to me. I can't remember how to get in contact with him. But I can try. I can try now. You want me to try? Yeah. I could try. No promises I'll be able to get in contact with him, but I tried to look for his contact forever and couldn't find it, which seems way too convenient.
Find those bones, Bailey.
But I do know someone that can.
And don't let the Smithsonian have them.
Because they'll destroy them.
They'll never speak of them again.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I got.
That's it.
Are you convinced yet?
No.
No. I thought I had you. Oh well.
I don't know, man. What I'm confused about is, are we talking about dragons here, or are we talking about dinosaurs being young?
Both.
So dragons are a dinosaur, or dragons are seraphim, spiritual beings?
Dragons are dinosaurs.
And what are those things that God made that are good?
That he's very proud of. Yeah. He talks about the behemoth and the leviathan.
So then my question is, okay, yes, go into that a little bit, the behemoth and the leviathan. Because, but then why is Satan a serpent, and why is the dragon evil? Always evil in the scripture. That doesn't make sense to me.
So you read...
If they're good, if the dragon's good.
You can read the later chapters of Job. I think it's 38, 39, somewhere in there. God is telling Job all about his creation, all the natural stuff that he made, all the creatures he made, and then he kind of crescendos this whole discussion with Job in two creatures. One is a land creature and one is a sea creature. And he calls them the behemoth and the leviathan. And very much like those descriptions that we were reading, you read the description of the behemoth, and it can stand up in a raging river and not be bothered. It's got a tail like a cedar tree. It's super tall. It's got sinews like iron, all this stuff. And people are like, oh, it's an alligator. Oh, it's a elephant. Oh, it's a rhinoceros. But again, none of those have all of it. But a sauropod definitely does.
And the leviathan's in the ocean.
And the leviathan is a sea creature. God talks about putting your hook in the ocean to catch it like a fish. He's like, you wouldn't dare. You wouldn't think of it. You're going to toss your hook in the ocean, catch it like a fish? Yeah, right. Get real. That's what God tells Job. And the leviathan can't be pierced by arrows, breathes fire, all kinds. And again, it sounds like a dragon. But these are creatures that God is describing to Job as though Job were familiar with them. And as though they were real. I mean, he spends the whole point of what he's saying is, I made these things. That's the whole point of his discussion with Job, is I actually made these things and I control them. And that's what he says about the behemoth and the leviathan. He says, who can bring a sword against them but their maker? I'm the only one who can control them. You wouldn't dare.
But the whole point is that no one thinks that these things didn't exist besides dragons, right? That there's, well, I wouldn't say no one, but people believe dinosaurs existed. The thing that it throws a monkey wrench in the system is that they believe they were millions of years old due to evolution, and that humans didn't exist at the same time. And this kind of potentially shatters that whole view that supports evolutionary theory.
Yes. If this were accepted, that recognizable dinosaurs from the land before time were interacting with human beings as recently as 500 years ago, that would destroy the scientific consensus. Not tweak it, you would have to throw it out completely. So that's the thing. One anecdote, one story, one picture, one cave drawing. Okay. Maybe it's just a trick of our eyes or a trick of our brain that interprets that cave drawing as a sauropod. But it's like over and over and over and over. Through all these different cave drawings, through all this artwork, through all these historical accounts, from all kinds of people, from all kinds of places, across time, thousands of years of human history, people continually explaining that they are dealing with dinosaurs, and their descriptions match dinosaurs that we know about, that we have dug up and found, and we can look at. Look at them, look at their description, and pretty much go, yeah, that looks like what they're talking about.
So just to wrap it all up, basically the point you're trying to make is we don't know anything. There's no such thing as a complete scientific consensus.
And actually, that should excite scientists.
Right? It's like, oh, new discoveries.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's frustrating to have to tear down your old paradigm, but you get to build a new one that includes the new evidence that you found, and you're closer to the truth. That should be exciting. The fact that we know that science has stalled and is not going to go anywhere anymore is when you stop getting excited about new evidence that destroys your paradigm and you hold on to your paradigm and reject the evidence. That's when you know it's game over. You're dead in the water. Until some brave soul comes and just says the emperor has no clothes and tears down the paradigm and starts a new one.
Yeah, it sounds pretty boring. Sounds pretty boring. All right, shall we move on?
Do we have any questions?
Corp said maybe it's a hippo.
Not the tail. It's always the tail, bro. Rhino, hippo, elephant doesn't have the tail.
He also said Land Before Time. I loved that movie as a kid. Land Before Time was awesome. What was the pterodactyl's name? It was like the main character, right?
No, the main character was a baby sauropod, Ducky.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember?
I remember the pterodactyl more than anything, but I do remember that now.
After all that, you can go to you can go to divinecreative.org and buy our meme coin, get to the heart coin, and we promise not to rug pull on you.
And if we do rug pull you, it's for the kingdom.
Oh gosh.
So we're rug pulling for the
some
kingdom.
Kenneth Copeland stuff right there. That's bad. That's bad.
Harry Grow.
Okay, but for real. Hey, you can go to divinecreative.org. You can find out all about what we're doing. You can give to our ministry if you like what you see. Please subscribe, leave a comment, tell us what you think, give it a like. It really helps a lot more than you think. And we'll see you next time.
You pray for us this time.
Yeah. Lord Jesus, we thank you that you're with us. And walking with you is more fun and more exciting than anybody could ever imagine. We thank you, God, that we can do it with you and that you love us and that we're safe in your arms. Amen.
Amen.
I felt like